Everyone in?
Yep.
Okay, let's call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
East Ward Alderman Rob Foster,
Here.
East Ward Alderman Mark Bowers, Mayor Natalie McNish,
Here.
West Ward Alderman Vicky Montgomery,
Here.
West Ward Alderman Stacy Lee.
Here. All right.
Mayor, if you want to mark his entering, if you
Oh,
want, if you want to
okay,
get him on record as on roll call. Give him just a second. Hi, Mark.
Hey,
Hey, we just kind of ran through roll call, so I'll turn it back over to the mayor so she can get you in on here.
okay.
Karen, can you add him to roll call?
East Ward Alderman Mark Bowers.
Here.
All right,
All right. If you would stand for a moment of silent prayer or reflection.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
thank you.
The minutes from the prior meeting are in your board packet. Are there any changes that are needed?
There was, under the city hall discussion, there was a comment made that was in response to a concern from the public comments that there was something unusual about funding the city hall, utilizing multiple funds. And the comment clarified that the city hall was actually purchased for that purpose, utilizing multiple funds, and I thought it would be beneficial to have that in there.
Okay. Karen, do you know where in the minutes that needs to be placed? Okay, we can go back and look at the recording. Do you remember who made the comment so that we can look at the right spot?
It was Rob.
It was Rob? Okay.
Well, no, to be really very specific, I asked Monica if that were what it was. And in fact, the documents prepared in the timeline showed this, or at least in the financial timeline that we had in our packet in our last meeting showed the same thing. And Monica clarified that that's indeed how the same mechanism we use to purchase the building for City Hall.
Right, was used for the financing of the remodel. Okay.
No, to be clear, the purchase and the remodel up to date. Yeah.
Okay. We will go back and make changes. Do you want to see those changes before approval, or do you want to approve with changes?
Approved with changes.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion then.
Move to approve.
Okay, I have a motion, a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Who was the second?
Mark was the second. And then expenditures are also in your packet. Monica is here if you have any questions on specific items. Monica, is there anything specific you want to draw the board's attention to?
I don't think so. I mean, everything that's in the memo would be the extraordinary items. The rest are regular expenditures.
Okay. If there are no questions, I'll take a motion for approval.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. And that takes us into presentations. And first up, do we have Andy?
We do. So we had talked about doing some update some time ago back on the interchange project and the new CC corridor. Back around budget time, we decided to kind of hold off and bring that back after the budget. Well, obviously we're after the budget, but we were really in the middle of kind of trying to get to a better understanding where we were going to fall financially with MoDOT's administrative costs and just on the project in general and kind of closing some things out. And so I've asked Andy and Steve both to be here and just kind of give us a rundown and kind of catch us up a little bit on the project itself. So Andy, Steve, whoever wants to take that over, you guys go right ahead.
Okay, I'm gonna lead this, Sam, and show you a PowerPoint presentation. Can I go ahead and share my screen?
It's all yours.
Okay. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay, so got a treat for you all tonight that has some good news in it, some fun pictures and some good little stats and facts that you can put in your pocket and rattle off later. But I can also run through it kind of quickly. So just sit back and enjoy the ride and ask me any questions you want at the end. This initial slide is something, it's got information at the top that we've been showing you in previous presentations. And so I won't spend a lot of time going through those initial estimate numbers and some of the alternate bids that were not ultimately included in the project. But what I'd like to direct your attention to is the original contract amount, which is, remains fixed from the time bids were open until the project is completed, and that is about $11.5 million. But some good news there is the net change order amount is actually a negative number. That's something that I've always strived to do on every major project that I'm involved in, and I'm happy to report that the aggregate of all change orders when this is finished will actually bring the contract amount down some. And the gross item adjustments of over $200,000, that is where the timing was really good for this project, and the city and MoDOT and all parties benefited from the oil prices and asphalt prices that were actually declining around the time that the project was awarded. And so the adjusted contract amount as it stands right now, as all pending change orders go through the system, is actually a little over $250,000 less than the original contract amount. So that's good news. Here's some cool numbers from the project. When it's all said and done, over 200,000 cubic yards of excavation, including a lot of that being in rock. We bid that. We set that up as unclassified excavation so that the contractor had to assume some risk there, and they did run into some rock and a little more than they expected, and so you all got a bargain on that price as well. There were over 400,000 cubic yards of embankment, both from the borrow area and from on site. Show you a picture of the borrow area later. Over 78,000 square yards of 6-inch thick base rock, 5,400 square yards of concrete sidewalk. That's your walking trail. When we do the math on that, it's just under a mile of 10-foot wide multi-use trail. Over 5,000 feet of pipe of various sizes, almost 600 feet of some large concrete box culvert, which I'll show you some pictures of as well. Over 33,000 tons of asphalt in the pavement and shoulders. And your new bridge has over 348 feet of structural steel piling, that's 10-inch H piles, 667 square yards of bridge deck, and over 18,000 pounds of epoxy coated reinforcing steel, which I also have a picture of coming up. And then 5,209 square feet of MSE wall, which, although rather expensive, the trade-off in what you save in bridge length when you use these MSE walls offsets the cost. And I'll show you that also in a picture. So we're going to do some kind of before and after photos. This is what the site looked like back in May of last year. There's the borrow area up in the upper left, and the end of one of those box culverts where we actually extended that under 44 to get under the ramps in the outer road. And there's a view of it today. Quite a transformation. Some of those same landmarks pointed out. An aerial view of this is the west side of I-44. Some of the bridge construction just starting last May. And then there's another view. There's some things to get your bearing if you didn't realize you were facing St. Louis there, or Conway, depending on how far you're going. Now, if you take a look at that bridge, that is so much shorter of a length than bridges used to be required to be over I-44. And it's those mechanically stabilized earth walls that allow us to be able to do that. So while we're speaking about this bridge, I got some great footage or some pictures of the bridge being built. There was lots of things that happened before this in the ground, but to spare you all the time, this is the first girder being swung into place over I-44. We stop traffic over the lanes that girder is hanging over for safety. And that's the first girder being set into place. Those are massive concrete precast, pre-stressed girders made elsewhere in a casting plant and then trucked into the project. And there's the completion of that east span, all 5 girders in place that first night in August. We came back the second night, and there we're setting girder number 1 of the other span over the westbound lanes. There it is, getting a little closer. No matter how good the crane operator is and how strong the cables are, I still don't ever want to be that guy standing there or sitting there on his knees. There's that girder in place. There's the middle one touching down. Last girder going in place. And then we start the deck pour. You can see that green colored epoxy coated reinforcing steel that's coated to make it last longer, keep it from corroding, rusting. And then when the sun came up, that's about the time they were almost done with the bridge deck. And that's a completed product, complete with the City of Marshfield sign. All I need now is a night picture with that lit up for you. Another before picture. Finished product. Steve pointed out a wrecker pulling an 18-wheeler that made it around the roundabout, so don't let anybody tell you it can't be done. And here's on the other end of the project, the Route 66 park. Looking at that from the other direction, another one of those large box culverts is actually part of the walking trail system for the park. And finally, we've got some side-by-side footage. This is a total of 4-minute long video, but when it gets to some of the more monotonous parts of just driving down a stretch of CC, I'll skip forward and speed it up a little bit, but I think you'll want to see this first part.
You didn't prepare music and a commentary for the whole 4 minutes, Andy?
I didn't think of that quickly enough, Sam.
I'll fill in some of it. I will reemphasize during design, for those who don't know, I led the design process of this whole thing, the planning and the design. And Andy really picked up the hard work on the construction side, but that bridge is a story in itself. When we were starting this project, we had all these alternates to try to make this fall within the budget that the city had. We were nervous about inflation at the time. We were nervous about gas prices, steel prices at the time. One of the main things that was a victory that probably no one knows was when we were talking to FHWA about this job, we saved about $1.5 million on that bridge length because they wanted that bridge to span an additional 2 lanes of traffic for the future widening I-44 to an 8-lane section instead of a 6-lane section. So we were successful in talking them down off of that requirement in Jeff City. And that was a substantial milestone in the project. I think another one that saved a bunch of money was on the environmental side. We really were facing a heavy, substantial bat impact fee to the wooded area that was cleared as part of the project. We had our lobbyist in DC, those who don't know, do a couple things for us on this project. They went and advocated for the Route 66 minimal impact and a mitigation settlement there that was significantly less than what we were looking at when we first started talking about the impacts to the connection at Rifle Range. The other thing was the bat habitat, and we were able to save a lot of money on a potential bat bank donation that other communities were having to make for similar impacts to potential habitat. So all really great collaboration between us, the funding agencies, and the things that were happening behind the scenes that you didn't get to see with a drone, but really contributed to the success of the project. I think, yeah, other than that, I mean, as we make our way through, we flew the left-hand side of the screen. We flew on the exact same coordinate system or flight path as what you're seeing on the right-hand side of the screen. So we wanted to document this for the city for historical purposes, but it's kind of just hard to believe that what you're looking at on the left is the same exact picture as what you're seeing on the right. So it's a great project, transformational for the area. Couldn't have been more proud to be part of it. I'm most proud of our team, everyone who's involved, and we delivered this thing without anybody getting hurt out during construction, Andy. And that's a tribute to you and the emphasis on safety, and Steve Bavanovich and HR Quadri did a great job with this as well. And so, yeah, it's something you guys should all be proud of. It's not every day that a job comes in at budget or even close to budget with prices fluctuating like they are in the market. And so you really are blessed to have this for the price that you got. And you had a lot of great people with passion and a lot of late nights behind this thing. So we're really to the end of our contract on this project. We're going to close this thing out. And Andy, you might get to the end of when final closeout date is here after the fly through, but yeah, we're nearing our end of our contractual commitment to the city. So we thank you for that. And I guess with that, I'll let Andy wrap it up.
Okay. Thanks, Steve and Sam and everybody. City leadership, mayor. Yeah, so the completion date officially of the project is June 1st, but there's no way, no reason why we need to tarry around that much longer. We will be Quadri will be coming back in as soon as the asphalt plants are back online later in the spring, probably about mid-April, because we have some corrections listed. I know any of you that have driven the corridor have noticed some issues there on the pavement, and those were identified. Some of those were identified when we semi-finaled the project with MoDOT, and then some others showed up over the winter. And so while the asphalt contractor is back in, we'll just have them repair all those areas before we turn that over to MoDOT. With that, is there any questions that I can answer?
Questions?
Great job.
Yeah, Andy and Steve, both of you, thank you for an amazing product. And from what I've heard from staff, you've been excellent to work with. We really appreciate your dedication and the work you've done in Marshfield.
Thank you. Feelings mutual.
We'll see you again, maybe on the next one.
Okay. Hope to do.
All right, that takes us up to the TEEP grant, and I believe we've got Mel and
Yep.
Sam to present on this one.
Yeah, so I'll just kind of give you a little review on what on what this is. MoDOT has a grant process that you can go through it and you can do some study work on some routes not on MoDOT right away. And so we applied for that in conjunction or in partnership with the county. And so it wasn't a big study, wasn't a large dollar amount, just a $10,000 grant with our part being 1,000 of that, and the county's been another 1,000 of that. And so we decided to we brought that to you all for consideration, but we wanted to use that to really look at the intersection there at Jackson and Cherry Blossom Way, and then there at DD and Elm as well. And so city staff, Great River Engineering, Stan participated from the county, and Marshfield Schools came and participated in this. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Mel to kind of present what our findings are. I will tell you, this is getting turned into MoDOT tomorrow. And so I just wanted to give you guys an opportunity to see what we were able to come up with for this.
Can you hear me?
Yep, it's all yours, Mel.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. All right, could you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll just kind of go through some of this. Sam already said that this was the funding is a TEAP, which stands for Traffic Engineering Assistance Program. And if you remember, it was a competitive grant. We had to compete for it, and it was 80-20 funding. And as Sam said, $10,000 total was what we spent on this, and $8,000 to be paid by MoDOT, $1,000 each for the city and the county. And our scope was to look at two different areas, both in close proximity to each other around the school. I'll show you a map of that in a minute. But one is the area at South Elm, East Jackson, and School View Drive. And the other one was at Route DD and North Elm Street. And so for those two study areas, we were to review the accident history there, perform traffic counts to determine the peak hour traffic in an AM and a PM condition. And then we were to prepare a conceptual plan to improve those areas, a cost estimate, and document that in a letter. And to kind of let you know the schedule of what we've done, we were given notice to proceed on this work by MoDOT on November 16th. And we had a kickoff meeting on December 9th with the city, the county, and the school. And we performed those traffic counts on December 17th, and that was performed while school was in session. We presented those traffic counts and had an initial meeting to discuss what options we might do to address and make those areas better on February 24th. On March 3rd, we reviewed those concepts with the city, county, and school. On March 8th, we talked to SIMCOG, make sure that they're aware of that there's issues here and that we were looking at those. And then tonight we're presenting it to you, and then tomorrow we'll need to submit to MoDOT to meet the schedule. They give you a really tight schedule on these things, and especially having to make sure that we do the traffic count while school's in session. This is the map that shows the study area. I think you're all aware of it, but here's the elementary school and the high school. And so study area 1 is here and study area 2 is here, and I'll zoom up in on those. And so study area 1, we've got Jackson Street and the drive going to the school. And this really acts as like a 4-way intersection, but it's separated by a distance. And that geometry of that makes it not perform very well. So that was one of the areas we were looking at. And then the other study area was just north of that, where we got those 2 back-to-back curves, and we've got Elm Street coming into those 2 curves. So on accident review, we reviewed the accident. We went and got 5 years of accident data from the Missouri State Highway Patrol. On route DD and Elm, there were 4 accidents. One was an injury accident in which 2 people were injured. And then there was 3 other accidents that were property damage accidents. At Washington, route DD and Elm, so that's that southern curve. That's this one right here. There were 3 accidents. 1 was an injury accident and 2 were property damage only. And then at study area 1, we had 2 accidents, both property damage only. And so just to kind of give you an overview of what this is while all accidents are important and that type of thing, kind of the threshold where we really start looking at, okay, the accidents are out of control here, is if we have 5 accidents within a year. And so none of these met that threshold. And that, I guess that's a good thing that we're not having those accidents. But while there are accidents there, the accidents in themselves don't warrant like putting a signal in or something like that. Okay, and then this exhibit here, it basically just kind of shows how these are controlled, where the stop signs are at and that type of thing. So if I look up here at where Route DD and Elm come together, I mean, it's the Route DD is a through movement east and west, and then Elm, there's a stop sign. And then if I go south down here to this Route DD turns into Washington and Elm Street hits it again. Elm Street has the stop sign and it's a through movement here. And then down on the study area 1, my Zoom pictures are in the way, so I can't see it. Again, this really just acts like a 4-way stop that's extended by distance. And then we've got this strange angle that Jackson hits it there. So that's kind of how it's, I'm sure you guys are all aware, that's kind of how it's controlled now from a traffic perspective. We did traffic counts on that, and the purpose of those traffic counts is then we can use those these numbers to model and see, okay, how's it acting right now, and then look at how improvements or changes will affect it. And so if you'll look at these numbers here, there's 2 numbers. Like, for example, can you see my cursor? If I'm moving my cursor, can you see it?
Yep.
Okay, so for example, if I look at this one here for this through movement here on Route DD, there was 194. That means there was 194 cars during the peak hour in the morning. And then the number in parentheses where it says 174, that would be the same thing in the evening. And so that one thing that really kind of complicates this, though, is that 194 cars in 60 minutes may not sound that bad. But in reality, that could have happened in 10 or 15 minutes, you know, like schools starting or schools getting over or something like that. So it can be a lot worse than what these numbers would indicate, just due to how they get compressed into the way the traffic really moves there. But anyway, so that is the data that from our traffic counts. And then we input that data. This is probably too much information, but we input that data into some software called highway capacity software, and it's kind of the standard that everybody uses to analyze it. And then it gives us an indication of delay, and then we give it a level of service. And so, for example, I've kind of highlighted this blue, the southbound on Elm Street up there at that north corner there at where DD and Elm come together, the average delay during that movement in the morning is 21 seconds, which is a level of service C. And again, this software, what it really doesn't, even though it's a standard that everybody uses, what we saw in real life was something much worse than this, is the delays. Yes, did somebody have a question?
I don't believe so.
I think it was just some interference. I think.
Okay, but what we found is this software, even though this is the industry standard that everybody uses, it underestimates the problem. What we saw was much worse than what this model is predicting. So be aware of that. And some of the reasons is for example, if I go back to the map here real quick and look at this intersection right here. The software doesn't account for the fact that this is coming in askew on a curve, and that there's another intersection really close to it. And so it's just not that sophisticated. So in real life, we know that what we're getting out there is worse than what the model is predicting. Let's see here. Now, one thing that's really interesting though is that the problem isn't right now, even though we know that it doesn't perform the way we want it to perform right now. Where the problem is you're really going to see is when we construct North Elm and we connect that, the traffic is going to increase dramatically here, and we're going to get these level of services F here. So it's going to get, you know, if the model predicts a average delay of 20 seconds sitting there now, that's going to go up to an average of 2 minutes. Some cars can be much more than that and some much less, but it's going to get about, what is that, 6 times worse than it is right now once we build that North Elm connection. So that's kind of the future. So the solution that we came up with, and we talked about a lot of different things, but the solution that we came up with for the concept is shown here. And so the point is to improve. We've got a elm coming in here at a skew on this point here, so we can square that up with a 90°. And then to increase the distance, right now the distance between St. Charles and Elm and this intersection are really close, to increase the distance here, and then to add these turning movements. So essentially we got a right turn onto Elm Street. We got a left turn off of Elm Street onto DD. And then we have left turns onto Elm Street and both directions on Elm Street. And we'll see in a minute the result of that. But that's the kind of the concept that we have for that intersection. If we go down to our study area 1 down here, essentially what we looked at here was to make this is to improve this 4-way. It's still a 4-way intersection, but rather than having them separated the way they are right now, and that causes a lot of confusion when you're out there looking at that, because especially with a lot of young drivers, it doesn't operate near as smoothly as it should. There's a lot more backup because of that separation. So in order to take that out, what we're proposing is to square it up to a formal 4-way and then drop that down here. Now this will impact, both of these projects impact the church's property, but this one, it would remove that drive. So that would have to be negotiated with them during the right-of-way acquisition part of this project. And then if you want to see how these projects look together, this is kind of both of them on the same map. So you can see our proposed improvements up here and down here. And then there's, ever since I've been involved in this project, there was a concept a long time ago for a roundabout near the school. So we just kind of, it's beyond the scope of this project, but we kind of sketched how that could still be accommodated in the future with this project. So
And those other lines that you're seeing, those are previously platted easements, roads, and right of ways. So I mean, that's just something that's on that property just for future use. And so that's what you're seeing. That's not something Mel's drawn in there. That's just, he's just drawing that on top of the plat that's there now.
yeah, and this isn't necessarily something I'm proposing. It's just something that's been discussed in the past, and I want to show that our proposal wouldn't inhibit that if somebody wanted to do that. But it's beyond the scope of this project.
Years ago, whenever we had talked about this, Dennis Amsinger had helped us put together a sketch of how we might move traffic over around that area. And that was one of the proposals, was to put a roundabout down in that area somewhere. And so Mel just kind of threw something that might work to scale along those lines, but that's not part of this.
And then we ran those proposed improvements back through our software. And even though, again, the software doesn't really account for all the real world conditions, we did see an improvement with the modeling and with the delay, both existing and in the future. But even in the future, now this is projection way into the future. I think it's a 20-year projection that we have with North Elm on there. We get down to a level of service E, which is still by traffic standards acceptable, certainly not optimal, but we do not have a failing intersection even 20 years out with our proposed improvements. And then everything comes to the cost. So we estimated the cost So this northern part, the proposed improvements there, our estimated cost for that project is $743,000. And then this southern project is estimated cost of just under $300,000. And all this is documented in a report, which the city has a copy of in this presentation that I've given today. Also, the city has a copy of. So with that, I will open it up to questions.
What happens next when MoDOT gets this?
Really, it's over as far as this study goes. So the next step would be to determine if you want to move forward with any of these projects. And so there's a few different ways to do that. So for example, on that south project, when we were meeting with the school, they were saying that they might want to be a participant in that project. They were really excited about it and they saw the value of it. And so they acted like that they might want to be a financial participant in it. So that would just be start having some discussions and determine if you want to do that and who pays for what. On the northern project, I would recommend honestly that you wait a little bit. I would probably want to see when you build North Elm, I would want to see how much traffic we really get there. Right now, everything's a prediction. I would recommend that you build that and then come back and do another traffic count there, see if it's better or worse than the prediction. And then, you know, one thing that you might consider there is a MoDOT cost share. And Sam talked a lot about that when they were meeting is that potentially if there was interest in doing that project, we might be able to do a MoDOT cost share and trade some miles for some financial construction costs.
So basically what we did on the interchange, you know, so now from Rifle Range Road all the way up to Price Cutter is going to be city street. It's not going to be MoDOT anymore. And so I don't know that MoDOT would have any interest in that, but I know that they are eager to offload miles of road for them to maintain. So that might be a good trade-off to talk about. But I do agree with Mel, you know, so just a reminder, this is on our, so within SIMCOG, we're a member of SIMCOG. And so within that, we have a TAC committee as well. So it's a Transportation Advisory Committee, which myself and Stan and Randy Owens sit on. This is an identified project, but it is way on down on the list. But whenever you have additional skin in the game, obviously it helps rise that to a different level. But I do agree with Mel. And so I think the next step would be to kind of prioritize, and then we start talking about, start looking at the shareholders in that and their stakeholders in that. You know, it is something that obviously now that this study's done and we've looked at this, the biggest impact property-wise is going to be with the church. And so I think it's important for us to get out and to talk. I know we're in conversations with the school and what that might look like, but I do think it is important to get that out in front of the church at some point before they make plans to sell or develop or whatever, and just see what their idea is and see where they fall on this and see what they might be willing to do and not to do and willing to sell and not to sell, whether we're talking about buying all the property or just the right of way, or see if there's a trade-off there. But I think for now, you know, when we talk about our transportation projects, we do have, after our debt service and everything and our projects that we're proposing to do this year, you know, we are talking about still having somewhat of a surplus to be able to do maintenance and to do this and that. And so maybe we look at that and we see what we might be able to do with that with some partnerships. And I think that we have some, I think we have the ability to start moving some of this forward that we haven't had before. So I think the next step is really to get those stakeholders involved and show them this and just see what everybody thinks of it.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Thank you, Mel.
I appreciate you guys.
Thanks, Mel.
Okay.
Okay, that brings us to unfinished business, and we have Michael.
There we go.
Hi, Michael.
Hello, good evening. So we're continuing with some relatively good news. So I'll kind of go through the highlights of the report. I'm not going to go through it as nearly as detailed, just simply because we kind of know where we're at, and we haven't changed a whole lot from where we were. We'll talk a little bit about the vaccine, the Webster County Health Unit, Marshfield VA Clinic, Marshfield Family Clinic Pharmacy, Jordan Valley, Marshfield Price Cutter, Fordland Clinic, as well as probably some others I'm unaware of, have received doses of the COVID-19 vaccine. Persons interested should contact those organizations or their personal health care provider for appointment availability. And interested persons may also register online through the state's vaccine navigator to get registered for vaccine as it comes. Phase 1B, Tier 3, which is critical infrastructure, will be opening up on March 15th. So that'll open the gates a little wider for folks to be able to have access to vaccine. The local hospitals, Cox is reporting 21 admissions, Mercy's reporting 27 admissions, which are both down from what we've seen in the past. And right now we have 3 individuals from Webster County that are hospitalized. Hospital capability score still holding around that 5.1 range. As far as testing, the testing demand is really down. The last test site we did, I think we tested 2. There's a number of places now that's offering testing. Again, Price Cutter is doing it along with many of the clinics in town. Health Unit is doing it 5 days a week, leave up to 10 a day. So testing is very available at this point, and the demand is less than what we've seen. Those test sites are still going on, however, at this point. As far as vaccination statistics, what the state is reporting, Missouri says that 1,075,813 have received their first dose. 580,527 has received their second. So a total of 1,641,484 persons vaccinated as of this morning, which is 17.5% of the population. Webster County, Missouri is reporting 5,922 received their first dose, 2,966 has received the second. It's for a total of 8,873, and that's hitting around the 15% mark for Webster County. Right now, we've got 11 patients that are actively ill, 4 of which are from the central region of the county. Cases have increased by 9, so and that's a lower number than we've seen. Active increased by 7, and then the deaths increased by 9, but they increased by 9 due to a calculation issue. So it wasn't a spike. That was an error over the last report or so. You'll notice on the next page, and rather than providing some of the data I was putting there in regards to next to surrounding counties, I changed that over to some COVID statistics, because I think that's really where we're at now is wanting to know what our increases are looking like on a weekly basis. You notice that in Missouri, new cases in the past 7 days have increased by 2,401. And what's important about that is it wasn't very long ago I was telling you that those cases were increasing upwards to 30,000 every 7 days. So that's a very important number. Deaths have increased by 18 in the last 7 days. Still quite a bit of testing going on throughout the state, 60,121 tests. The positivity rate for the state's 4.5, so we're below that 10% margin, which is good. Hospitalizations are down at 857 throughout the state. ICU admissions are at 171, and then on ventilators throughout the state, 114 persons are on vents. Schools, this data is as of the 9th. We had no schools reporting positives. Marshfield was reporting 2 quarantined. Rogersville was reporting 1 quarantined, but no positives as of the 9th. The FDA has granted emergency use authorization for Johnson & Johnson, the single shot vaccine. Also, the CDC has released new guidelines for fully vaccinated persons, which allows individuals to not wear face masks under certain conditions. And there is an attached document to your report that you should have that outlines that. Currently, Marshfield, Elkland, Seymour, and Rogersville account for those 11 active cases. And the positivity rate for Webster County is currently down at 1.9%, which is one of the lowest we've seen. With that, unless we have any questions, that's what I've got to give you tonight. Well, one other little piece of information. If you looked at a line graph, 1st of January, we were looking at on a weekly basis in Webster County, we were adding roughly 250 cases a week. Right now, we're in the single digits weekly. So much better picture than what we were seeing in January.
Thank you, Michael. Staff, because Tier 3 is opening up, that will allow many of our employees to become eligible. I don't know if they have vaccine around here, but if you would let them know that we would work with them during working hours if they want the vaccine, similar to what we did before.
So we were eligible under under the Tier 2, and so we've offered.
That's good.
Okay.
Any questions on Michael's report? Okay. I had reached out to the task force and the health unit board asking for their opinions on metrics. I got the email, well, I spoke with them on the phone, but I got an email out to them just Sunday. They met Monday and Tuesday of this week. And I have forwarded on the email I got from both of them. The draft recommendations that I got from the health board is a draft, and I did not clearly communicate that because I didn't know that at the time in my first email. So this is going to be revised again. The author of this document noted some typos and some areas of percentage that weren't appropriately covered within the tables, but this is food for thought information that I wanted to get in front of you so that you could look at and come up with your other ideas. I also know that Springfield Greene County released theirs this week of what they're looking at or what data they want to use to make those informed decisions. So that information is available, and we can start using that to make our decisions as the ordinance expires for face masks, the end of this month. And then we also have the executive orders that still exist have occupancy restrictions. They have restrictions on self-serve food establishments. There's cleaning restricted, various different restrictions in all of those documents that we can start analyzing and determining what we need to do. I understand that nobody's had time to look at these documents, including myself, to make those decisions tonight. But there is one area that I would like to talk about, and that is our Parks Department. The Parks Board specifically held discussion on the reopening of the bathrooms, which is something we did not do last year. We did not open the public restrooms at the parks. And there's a process and some staff time that goes into that to de-winterize those locations. So they're asking if they can go ahead and do that, if they can rehang the swings on the swing sets and more or less reopen our parks. Any feedback from anybody on that topic?
I say open them up.
Okay.
Being that I live across the street from a park, I see every day that it's not going to matter. You add the swings back. I mean, they're still
Right.
using all of the equipment.
Yes,
You know,
they are.
With the parks being closed, it doesn't matter. They're still using it.
And I think
The parents that are very cautious, I have seen parents take out their handy wipes and wipe everything down
Okay.
before their kids get on it. When their kids get off, they wipe everything down. So
That's
the
nice.
people that are cautious are still going to be cautious. And, you know, I see nothing wrong with opening them back up.
Those are the same kids on the same school buses. They're sitting in the
Yeah,
same classrooms.
That's right.
They are playing on the same playgrounds. They are eating in the same lunchrooms.
And at the time those decisions were made, we had different information about surfaces.
Yes.
And I think we have refined information now about surfaces, and so that can play into our decision as well. But if there is no rebuttal, we'll just tell Mark to schedule getting things opened as normal.
Is there anything posted at, you know, I mean, I understand not everyone's going to abide by it, but just with city recommendations for, you know, safety
Honestly,
when
Mark,
using the park?
at Massey Park, when we first started, they had, I don't know how many times they wrapped caution tape
No,
around equipment.
I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about a sign that would say, you know, the city recommends this and that. I mean, just so,
Right.
yeah, our recommendation is out there. Doesn't mean that everyone's going to follow it, but
Mark can probably speak better to this, but I remember during organized events when we had baseball out there, I remember seeing the signs then. I don't know that they exist now because we haven't been using those facilities. Mark, could you weigh in, please?
Yes, ma'am. That's a great question. We did discuss some signage early on closure, last year, and had talked about patterning that after some other parks that had posted some signage, and a decision was made not to post that signage out there at the parks, but that the parks would remain closed. But the signage that we've used has been for our programming purposes. So when we did outdoor baseball, softball, youth baseball, softball, posted signs and have signs posted up. For basketball this season, we had signs and signage posted up at the FEMA building when we're doing Group X classes and the women's self-defense class. We have signs posted and signage posted, but not in the playgrounds themselves.
Mark, will we be adding signage as we're starting soccer?
Absolutely, yes. We will have the signage in place for soccer, just the same as our other programs. Yes, ma'am.
Where will that signage be?
We place it, gosh, at the concession stand, on the fences, and just any area that we can post that the public can see, basically, is where we've had that signage posted on the backs of bleachers, on the fronts of bleachers, on the sides of buildings.
Okay. Does that better answer your question, Mark?
yes. I mean, I think in an age when you got to put, you know, the words hot on a coffee cup, you know, I don't know. I'd be more comfortable if there was at least a sign just warning people to be cautious.
That sounds good. We will bring that discussion up again next meeting. And then also with our face mask ordinance, it is set to expire at the end of this month. So I need to kind of weigh, do we want to bring that back at the next meeting when we'll also have hopefully the final version of recommendations? Or do we want to schedule another meeting, a special session after that, where we can discuss and then do what we need to do from there? What is the board's opinion?
I guess we could wait to see what information we're given.
Okay.
I don't at this time have any intention of moving that beyond when it expires.
Okay. I will forward that information as soon as I get a final copy. And I'm hoping to also sit in on their meeting so that I can ask a couple questions. And if you have any questions, I'll gladly either forward you the link to the meeting, or please feel free to send me your question and I will try to get it asked. Next up is the SKEEP grant.
I'm just going to ask you guys to table that. We're still working with DNR, and I was hoping to have something back and a notice to proceed tonight, but it just, their engineers are still reviewing.
Okay, So that'll take us to the new city hall on the financial advisors report.
So we had talked last time about possibly having Joe come back and kind of talk to us about the financing plan. I talked to Joe and told him that, to back up just a little bit, I reached out to BKD about the space needs analysis. They're going to be here next week. And so we're going to go ahead and move forward with that. And so immediately after I talked to Joe and kind of told him where we were at, told him that we were going to review the space needs, just how things have changed here at City Hall. And and then he said, you know, really there's not, he was more than happy to come, but he said there's really not a reason for him to be here until we get through that process, until we start talking about some more numbers, because the interest rates really haven't changed since we visited with him back in, you know, September, October, November. And so in the packet tonight, really what you've got is the finance plan that we presented to you all back in December, in November, December. And so if there's any questions about that, Monica, I'd be happy to run through that, but it really hasn't changed and really don't have anything to update until we get through this next process.
Okay. Are there any questions we want to ask tonight? I definitely see Joe's point on waiting. Okay, with no questions, we'll move on to new business, paving specifications and bid contract with GRE.
So I asked Mel to hang around after his TEEP presentation. So as I'm getting him on here, I'll kind of explain what this is. It's fairly self-explanatory. But what this is in our growth areas, we had projected or we had presented and proposed, and you guys appropriated the funds. You know, we got somebody trying to get in. You guys had appropriated the funds for somewhere in the $1.3 million worth of transportation improvements. Some of that was going to be done out of the remaining bond dollars. Some of that was going to be out of the transportation fund, out of the cash. And so what this does, so when I started looking at the specifications to try to go out to bid for Elm Street, they're quite cumbersome, and we really have one chance to get that road right. This is a little above and beyond and different than just a normal overlay, which we've never really asked for consultant help on normal overlays. That's just something that I've usually done. But this one's a little bit different. They're not going to have to redesign anything. CMT's already designed everything for that. But this does include the specifications to make sure it gets through the bid so that everybody's bidding apples to apples. It also goes through construction phase services and inspection services. So while we were doing this, I also asked Mel to put together some numbers for out on North Marshall. There is down at the bottom of the hill, just before you get to the edge of where the city limits used to be, there's some metal culverts that go underneath the road there at Lift Station 6. They're not exactly perpendicular, so they're pretty long that go across there. Those metal culverts at some point will rust out and they'll go bad. And so what I asked him to do was to put into the design and the bidding documents that would allow us to go in and design a box culvert, a concrete box culvert for that. So that does two things. It'll be permanent and be very long term. And it also doesn't restrict the flow right there. So it doesn't get choked down. Actually puts a bigger channel going underneath the road right there. And so that was part of the budget. There was a budgeted item in there for $125,000 for the installation of that, for the bidding and the contractors to put that in. It still has to be designed, and so there's part of the overall fee that you see there of the $84,000 includes that design and the bid documents for that. And then while we had that going, just to keep it all moving at the same time, the idea behind this is to go ahead and get Elm Street done this year. And then as we presented, we would like to go ahead and do Banning Street. We would like to do North Marshall, Buffalo, and some intersection improvement if everything, if our finances at the time will allow us to do so. Obviously, as we heard from Andy tonight, we're still a little ways out from knowing where we're at on that. So what we're proposing under this contract is to do Elm Street and then to put all these other ones as alternates underneath of there. So it's almost like a buffet that you guys can pick and choose from. Whenever those bids come back in, you can add alternate A, B, C, D, E as far as we want to go. But you're not committed to those. And so, but while we're bidding them out, while we're bidding Elm Street out, it is important to get them all in the same bid package, because obviously the more asphalt you do, the more units that you put down, the cheaper the unit price is going to be. So it was important to go ahead and get all that put together in the same contract. And so that's what you've got before you tonight. It was budgeted. This is the first year that I've ever put contingency into my numbers. The numbers in the budget were my numbers. Obviously, those fluctuate with fuel prices. Those were based off of numbers that we were seeing last year with the interchange projects and what I was seeing in some other towns and what the county bid was. I had inflated those just a little bit, but then I went ahead and tacked on a contingency on top of all of those. And so I'm confident that based on the prices at the time, I'm confident in the prices that I put in there, and that with the contingency that this contract's well within what I had budgeted. Now, obviously, if it's not, then we'll have to talk about the prioritization and what we might not accept in the as alternate bids. But this is on here for you tonight. If you guys want to approve that tonight, then we would go ahead and get started on it. It is the appropriate time to get everything going and get the bids out if we want to get this back. If we want to get the bids back and get this thing going in and completed in 2021. But if you guys want to take this and review it and bring it back in 2 weeks, 2 weeks isn't going to kill the project either. So it's ready for you.
Question.
Yep. Ask
That's
away.
all right, Mel. First of all, is the 84,000 a not to exceed, or is that a fixed sum?
The putting it through bidding, like preparing the documents, specs, and designing what needs to be designed and getting it through bidding is a fixed fee of 52,500. And then the construction services is just hourly, however much we use, with an estimate of 31.5 that we wouldn't be able to exceed without coming to talk to you.
Okay, that was my question, because if we decide only to do task 1 and 3, then obviously we won't have as much construction phase.
Right, yeah, so I didn't know how much you're gonna do, so I wanted to give it the flexibility. If you do less, then you pay us less.
Okay, so 52.5 is fixed and 31.5 is not to exceed.
Right.
Okay.
And that box culvert doesn't have to be done. I mean, I'll tell you this: tin horns aren't. They're not in bad shape. I mean, they are restricting the flow. It's been that way for years and years and years. That can be done at a later time. We can cut that road and cut straight edges, and we can go back with a concrete surface over the top of them. We can do that, or we can choose now not to do that. So that one there alone, I mean, there's $125,000 figured in there for construction that we can take off of that. There's also, probably, I think it was $20,000 worth of design in that, because it is pretty long and there is quite a bit to it. But those prices can come off if the board chooses not to do it as well.
Sam, when you were talking about the numbers that you felt confident with, are those the numbers in the transportation, like the Elm Phase 2?
Yeah.
25,650. That, and that these would be like, I mean, not including what's here. So it would be, over $500,000 to complete that road.
Well, yes and no. It depends. I mean, if you wanted, if we were saying that we were allocating all of this to Elm Street, if I'm understanding you right, Mark, if you want to say we were allocating all of this towards Elm Street, then yes, but there's dollars figured in here for the bidding services and stuff and the
Sure.
for the other roads.
I guess my I had said I'd like to see this done this year, but I don't know that we ever had a full discussion on prioritizing all of these paving projects. And I want to make sure, if this is absolutely what everyone's in agreement with, that this should go first, then yes. But at the same time, I know Banning's in rough shape and there's plenty of other roads in town that are rough shape. So if we proceed with this, is it pretty much, I mean, how how likely are we to be able to afford or even get to these other projects? And is that appropriate? I guess is my question.
So Mel can jump in here and where I misspeak, but I'm fairly confident, right? Other than fuel prices and can't control that, right? And where things go and the workload for the year. But if anything, I would think that we might have to, if anything, I would think that the only one that might not get done is that short section of Buffalo. But with that contingency in there that I had figured in there, I mean, I think I'm fairly confident that we'd be able to get to get Elm Street put in, the trails that go along with that. And I'm pretty confident that we would be able to get Banning and Marshall done as well. If we had a concern, again, if it came right down to it, we could drop that box culvert off there as well.
Yeah, and financially that's feasible too.
I think, and that's what I was speaking from was financially,
Okay.
and unless Monica, I mean, obviously those are my figures, but the figures that I gave her, I mean, I'll let you speak to your opinion on that as well.
Well, we put the numbers in the budget, and we're still coming out with cash left over for the following year's paving projects. So
Because we were projecting it on top of everything that we had projected. Just a full disclosure in case I'm just way off. We had projected on top of everything we had budgeted was another additional 200,000 plus that we weren't going to utilize and spend this year. Not to mention the reduction or the savings that we would have from the project that Andy talked about tonight, not utilizing all the contingency. So I think that we're sitting in a really good position to get these projects done.
Well, that's great. That's exciting to me.
Well, and I'm going to set it up so that, you can make the choice. Once you get it bid, you'll have hard numbers. You'll know exactly, what the bids are. And you can, like Sam said earlier, you can pick and choose and set your priorities once you know the hard numbers in front of you.
And again, not to say that I'm not confident, but that, the fluctuation in the cost, that the safety net in that is some of that contingency that we had figured in. And again, that box culvert does not have to be done now. We might catch some flack from paving a road and then a few years later cutting it up and putting that box culvert in. But there's nothing wrong with doing that. It won't hurt the integrity of the road. And so, we could peel back $125,000 of that pretty easy if we needed that to finish those projects up.
And what's being asked for tonight for this additional information and study and all that, if something happened and we weren't able to move forward with this year, is all that information good next year?
No, the bidding documents would be, all the bidding documents would be, the only thing that what we would be asking tonight, and let me know if this answers your question, Mark. What I'm asking for tonight or at the next meeting, if you guys want to review, is to approve this contract. Once that contract is approved, Great Rivers will work with city staff to start putting those specifications together and get the bid documents together so we can get those bid documents out. And so the bid specifications won't change unless we add or deviate from that. The bid documents themselves, they would change, or not the documents, but the bids that we received. They're only going to be good for 90, 120 days, whatever we put in that contract. And as far as that culvert goes, I know I keep going back to that, but even if we design it, it's not going to change the fact that at some point down the road, it's going to have to be designed. So that design won't really have a timestamp on it as well.
Okay.
You can do it later.
Monica, please step in if I messed up here, but I do believe most of this funding comes from when we talked about the remaining bond issuance. And it was our financial advisor's opinion that we should invest this in the additional projects we had on the back burner. Was that correct?
that is correct.
Okay.
It either has to do that or it goes back to the principal. And we do have, the clock is running on it. I wouldn't say that we have a hard deadline, but we need to spend that by this fall. I mean, we need to spend that by we need to spend that this year or put it towards the principal.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the funding mechanism to do all these projects is this, most of these projects is
Most.
this year.
Or half.
We're looking at two different funding mechanisms.
Okay.
The bonds, we're looking at utilizing those to finish the Elm Street and the
Do Elm
trail.
Street, okay.
And then if there were any remaining funds left over, and then we could use that for the other,
It would bleed over into the other projects.
Correct.
Which are also funded by the transportation sales tax and the cash balance.
correct.
So we would use all of the bond dollars towards the 1.3 that we had estimated,
Yeah.
right? And then whatever else we'd be making up out
So I
of.
think that's what makes Elm Street the priority. It's driven by a financial instrument that needs to be utilized this year. And that is the project that was part of the project that it was originally taken out for. And so it only makes sense that that becomes the top priority.
And the fact that we've got that amount of money to spend, and these other projects that need to be done. And you guys proved last meeting, the subgrade repair and the patching, that's all figured in there as well. I don't foresee another time when we would have that cash balance sitting there, being able to do that. After debt service and everything is figured into these other projects, still have an additional $200,000 per year. I just think that we're sitting in a very good place. And like I said, if I'm just completely missed it and off my rocker, then we've really not done anything but put bid specs together and not accepted alternate bids that we don't have to accept. And we can push that out till next year and use those same bid specs to go back out.
Okay. So do we want study on this, or are we ready to go forward and approve the contract?
Say move forward.
Move forward? Okay, I'll read the
Okay.
bill. Bill number 2021-12, an ordinance approving the terms of supplemental agreement number 9 to engineering services contract between the city of Marshfield, Missouri and Great River Engineering for miscellaneous paving projects.
Move to approve.
Second.
Roll call?
Foster,
Yes.
Bowers,
Aye.
Montgomery, yes. Lee,
Yes.
Second reading, bill number 2021-12, an ordinance approving the terms of supplemental agreement number 9 to engineering services contract between the city of Marshfield, Missouri and Great River Engineering for miscellaneous paving projects.
Move to approve.
Second.
Roll call?
Foster,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Montgomery, yes. Lee,
Yes.
All right. And that brings us to Park and Recreation. Mark, you have a presentation for us on these items?
Yes, ma'am. What you see tonight in your packet is part of the growth areas that are in the budget for the Patriot Park development. It's two of the three things. These are the two items that are concerning SAP design. We had a chance to meet with Paul Link, and he confirmed that we're contractually obligated to go with SAP for these phases of that development. And the first thing that is in there, what you have is an updated, it's an updated contract to include these things, and they went through and updated it to the specifics of what we're asking in these two areas. The first thing that they put in there, part A, is Patriot Park Development Concept Design. And that'll give us a design for the rest of the acreage, basically. And it'll plan out the rest of the acreage out there at Patriot Park, which is going to be athletic fields, soccer, baseball, softball, multi-purpose, all the parking lots and sidewalks and ticket booths and bathroom facilities and concessions buildings, announcers booths, informational kiosks, etc. This plan will allow us up to 3 initial theme options and up to 3 initial site layouts before choosing a final concept design. And it will include a conceptual probable project budget for that, as well as an overall probable project timeline that takes through design and bidding and construction, etc. That is $35,000 for that service. The other thing that is in this update is the program, and it's the program and pre-design for phase 2, which is the activity center. And actually it says A in here and B, but they're not time sensitive. You don't have to do A to get B. We'll actually start with B because that is time sensitive for that program, because also in that budget, the other part that's not included here is a feasibility study. But what they do is they write the program for us, and they program out everything that we want to do, what it's going to take to do that programming, what kind of facility we need, how big it needs to be, things like community rooms, gymnasium, aerobics rooms, free weights and cardio areas, things of that nature. They're going to spell all of that out and write that program out for us. Then we can take that program and we can continue planning based off of that. So that's step one. We can take that program and then go to a company like Ballard King, who will do a feasibility study for us to say, can our community support what we want to do there? Are we going to have the memberships to pay for this big,
Keep going.
this big, sorry, that threw me off there a little bit. We had some interference. I apologize. Can we pay for it? Do we have the community support to sustain that? One thing that you hear about parks getting into every now and again is getting into a project like this. They get the whole thing built and ready, and then the community doesn't sustain it, or there's for some reason can't afford to continue to keep it up and things of that nature. This feasibility study will go a long way to ensuring that we're not going to get over our heads moving forward with phase 2. So once we have that feasibility study, we'll really know a lot about how to continue with programming phase 2. Are we going to have to rethink some things? Are we going to go out for, do we need extra funding, or will the funding that we have and the dollars that we have coming in cover what we're going to do along with the community support? So that's really an essential piece to our next steps out there at Patriot Park. And those are the two elements that you see before you tonight. Now, we're not asking for any action on these this evening, but we did want to get the information in front of you so you could take a look at it. And then at the next meeting, our architect, Christy Beatty, actually from SAP, is planning to be here for that meeting in case there are any extra questions, and she can represent SAP from that end.
Okay. Any questions on this? If not, let's move to uniform bid.
Yes, we went out for bid on the uniforms, and we actually only got one bid in. It's from the company that we used last year here in town, Absolute Screen Printing. And the bid amounts for all of the shirts have not changed from the bid that was accepted last year. Exactly the same. So we are asking for the board to take action to approve that bid for our shirts and uniforms for parks.
Okay.
Super.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right. And pool opening, closing.
Yes, we have our Westport Pools contract, which also has not changed. This will allow us to move forward with the scheduling of getting the pool ready to open this year, and then also the closing at the end of the season.
Okay. And on that one, we have a bill. Bill number 2021-13, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to sign a contract between the city of Marshfield, Missouri and Westport Pools.
Move to approve. Second.
Roll call.
Foster,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Montgomery,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Second reading, bill number 2021-13, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to sign a contract between the city of Marshfield, Missouri and Westport Pools.
Move to approve.
Second.
Roll call.
Foster,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Montgomery,
Yes.
Lee.
Yes.
All right. And now we have dog registrations, which I believe, Vicky, you had asked to see.
Yes.
And who is presenting on this?
I really appreciated the information that was provided. It went all the way back to 2015. But we put the dangerous dog ordinance in effect in 17, so I just went from 2016 on. In all of 2016, we had 18 registrations for pets. I did notice a couple of cats were were shown on. But once we instituted the ordinance, we had 49 registrations. I do know, remembering back on it, that there were so many people that didn't even know they were supposed to register their dogs. We did differentiate between presumptively dangerous dogs, dogs that were presumed to be dangerous. And it specified the pit bull breed. Out of those 49 registrations, 19 of those were the dangerous dogs. In 2018, it dropped from 49 to 26 registrations total and 11 dangerous dog registrations. It did pick up in 2020. See, in 19, it was almost the exact same numbers. In 20, it picked up to 34 overall registrations and 26 dangerous dog registrations. 21, so far of the information I was given, we've had 2 dangerous dog registrations. I didn't have information, I don't think, on total registrations. I struggle with this whole, I'm gonna just go on into the next section, number 6.
Okay.
I struggle a lot with this presumptively dangerous dogs. To me, any dog can be presumptive to be dangerous. To label it pit bull is, I still find ridiculous. I was curious to know in 2020, I don't need to know the past information that too much. If I don't know if Doug has this information or not, but do you know how many dog bites total? Didn't matter, dog bites reported to your or to the police? I know animal control is different than the police, but how many were?
To our police department, we had 6 dog bites reported, one being a pit bull or pit bull type. The other 5 were a dog of a different breed than that.
Okay, so to me that says pit bulls aren't necessarily a dangerous dog. Any dog can bite, any dog can cause.
Were the other 5 of the same breed?
No. I don't know if I can name off all 5, but when I went through the reports, I know one was a collie, one was a black lab, one was a boxer, one was a pit bull. One was just like, just listed as like a black shaggy type dog that we weren't able to determine a breed. And I can't remember the 6th one, but I do remember I looked, it was 5 of a breed other than pit bull.
So could you agree that the common denominator there is not a breed, but maybe a size?
So could I interject there on the presumptions are that suddenly pit bulls aren't dangerous anymore, but really don't those numbers point to the fact that because we put that ordinance in, owners have to treat and protect the public more with the proper fencing and the proper restrictions that we put in place, just shows that the ordinance is working. Not that pit bulls are any less dangerous than they were, but the ordinance was meant to lower those incidences with pit bulls. So to me, it sounds like it's working. And if it were working perfectly, which, you know, that's a noble goal, but hardly anything ever works perfectly. But if it were working perfectly, we wouldn't have any dog bites from the presumptively dangerous category. So the correlation doesn't ring true to me. It doesn't make sense to not account for the ordinance that we have in place as being the cause for those reductions.
Well, my point is that why we're singling out one breed when we should be singling out bad owners. I went through this last time we did this. And
doesn't our ordinance do that?
Well,
doesn't our ordinance include if you have a dog of any breed that has a routine of attacking people, it's going to be also in the category of presumptively dangerous?
Which is why we don't necessarily need this whole section here on pit bulls. We already have it covered. I don't see a reason. I want to just completely strike that entire section of the presumptively dangerous dogs.
There are a lot of national statistics that are concerning regarding that breed.
There's national statistics concerning German Shepherds. There's national
not to the degree of pit bulls.
Chihuahuas. I mean,
not to the degree of pit bulls. And the difference is some dogs, any dog can bite. That is true. Not all dogs can kill. And as far as fatal dog attacks in the U.S., what I saw in 2019, pit bulls contributed to 70% of fatal deaths in the U.S. I mean that.
But we're still. My point is, why are we going after a breed when we need to be going after bad owners?
Well, maybe we need to do both.
And I went through all this and I looked, and even from my experience in my neighborhood, I would love to strike this entire section on the deemed presumptively dangerous animals, because in the rest of this document, we have outlined on what we do for any animal that would qualify as a dangerous animal. Instead of having a $50 registration fee if you own a pit bull, why don't we have a small registration fee on every single dog? My neighbor down the street has 3 dogs. I'm not done, Rob. Do not interrupt me. My neighbor has 3 dogs that are constantly at large. They have received numerous citations. These dogs are constantly at large. The teeny tiny white dog that runs with them has bit more people than the German Shepherd has. We need to have stronger fines for at-large animals, and why don't we have a registration for all pets?
I
That
would
we're
taking
taking
agree
care
with
of the
stronger
owner.
fines. I
We're
definitely.
taking care of the owners rather than the specific breed.
So the problem with waiting for it to be an owner problem with a pit bull, and certainly not only, but Mark's right. The statistics show that the pit bull there is not a close second to the fatalities when a pit bull or a pit bull mixed breed is involved. And so the problem with waiting for the general part of that ordinance to take place, which is based on an incident, is the incident itself could very easily and likely result in a serious injury, if not death, as opposed to as you say, the little white dog that bites you when you're running along is certainly, although I guess it's in the realm of possibility that a little white dog could take you down and kill you. It doesn't stick, absolutely. So I'm going to give you that, but in reality, that is not likely, whereas a pit bull, once it engages in that nature of being aggressive, is not going to quit unless it is somehow, which is not easy to do, unless it's somehow stopped. It's going to not stop until there's a death. And the thing is, you talk about owners, and I agree, there are bad owners, there are bad parents, there are bad people, but certainly even owners and good owners of pit bulls are surprised when they or their family members are killed by these dogs. This is not new. This is not new data. It's not new to what's going on. And I got to say that the ordinance is working. Why would we mess that up? Why would we go backwards or lend any more risk to our community than we need to?
I honestly, I think that section of the ordinance is unnecessary. And I stand by that.
What is the fine for a loose dog? Because I mean, that may be certainly something to look at.
I don't remember off the top of my head.
I mean, if the current fines aren't stopping problems, in a city, you can't have dogs running around, no matter how nice you think they are.
So I will tell you, as far as the fines, that is one of the things that we're looking at in the fee review. That along with the after hours fees for doing that and the impoundment fees. And so I apologize. I don't know off the top of my head, but
If they get a ticket, it goes to court.
it's true. Yeah, right. If they're written a ticket, yes, then it does go to the court. Does go to court. and
So
it
that
depends on-
particular fine will be set by the judge, not particularly by the city.
I do know that it's, as far as the dangerous dog, it can be up to $500 of the citation, if there's been an incident where they have to impound the dog.
So would that be something we could get information on, where we could see the citations that were issued, the fines that were imposed, and the type of dog?
I'm looking at
You have
Doug
to
as
go
far as
through- You'd have to go through Jessica with the
Through
court.
Jessica in the courts? Is that something the board would like to see?
Sure, yeah. The type of dog and citation. Or be fine.
Okay. And again, if that fine is done through the courts, it's not a fee we can change. The judge will set that schedule of fees.
And is there a way to get a report on,
At least I
because
don't
we,
think it's.
you can be ticketed, your Chihuahua loose, your pit bull's
Mhm.
loose, your whatever's loose.
Uh-huh.
If our fee to get your dog, but whether they've bit someone or not, is not substantial enough for you to propel yourself to be a responsible dog owner, whether it's a 3-pound Chihuahua or a 95-pound stock dog like lives at my house, then maybe we need to look at that.
Okay.
so what are you at? I'm sorry, I was writing it and I was trying to follow it. Just what are you asking? Is there a way to what?
To know how many at-large dogs do we pick up?
Ooh,
Is there a way to know that?
pick up or reported? So we don't pick them up
Either-
unless they're aggressive. We don't pick them up.
Can we find out how
No
many
matter the
at-large
breed, we don't-
citations there've been?
Yeah. I think
Should be
so.
able to,
Yeah,
that's
I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, going through Jessica.
So if someone calls in and says, hey, there's a pit in my yard, or I think it is, but it's not being aggressive, we don't go?
Pit bulls we do.
We do.
Pit bulls we do. That's because that's part of the ordinance.
There's a
But-
Chihuahua in my yard.
But
Maybe.
dogs running at large says that dog running at large may be impounded. It doesn't say it shall be. So the determination was made several years ago because of the impact on the financial impact of sending staff and personnel, the boarding fees. All of that used to be, I'd have to go back and look, but it used to be up in the I want to say $60,000 to $70,000 range, maybe $50,000 to $60,000 range. And so by not going after we don't have a dedicated animal control officer anymore. We did at the time.
Okay.
And so by not going after every animal running at large, that budget's been reduced to 25,000. So I mean, I'm going off the top of my head, but it's drastically reduced.
And I remember the 60 to 70 range when I did the audit. So I would have been looking about 2010, range 2010, 11.
And at that time, we had somebody pretty much dedicated to animal control. I mean, it was his primary function. And I mean, I don't know how many hours was spent, but that was his primary function.
Now we don't pick them up. Running at large, we don't pick them up unless they're aggressive.
Right.
So what's the marker to determine aggressive
Someone
for any breed?
Someone calls in and would say that it was growling at them or it tried to bite at them or something to that nature.
And then during the day, the city staff will go to that, and our staff will determine that. If it's after 4 o'clock, then the police department goes and they determine that. And if they determine it, then they go through the proper procedures and they call our guys in.
Okay. Anything else on this topic? All right, with that, we are going to enter closed session. And I'll get a vote from you here in a minute, but Mark and Rob, we didn't get a link sent to you on the closed session. So after we take our vote and we shut down the open session, we will send you a link real time where you can click and come back in. So with that, pursuant to section 61021 subsection 2 for real estate, I'm looking for a motion to enter closed session.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Roll call.
Foster,
Yes.
Powers,
Yes.
Montgomery,
Yes.
Lee.
Yes.
Okay, and we will save this meeting down and get a new link to you as soon as possible. Thank you.